Hello everyone. Hi everyone joining us in this webinar. Thank you so much for your time. We'll give it a few minutes for people to start joining, but while we do that, I'll allow Johanna Tomczak to introduce herself. Johanna is from Gorilla Experiment Builder, and she's very excited to share some things that the Gorilla can do with us. So handing over to Johanna now.
Thank you, Dana, for the introduction. Yes, so I'm Johanna Tomczak. I work as a research specialist here at Gorilla Experiment Builder, and I've earned my PhD at the University of Leeds. That was during the pandemic, which forced me to move all my research online, and that is when I discovered Gorilla as a tool and found it really helpful, and it was a really positive experience for me because I was able to finish my PhD on time in just 3 years. It allowed me to even have extra time left, and I didn't spend any extra time writing up my dissertation. And the other thing I found really helpful about Gorilla during that time was that I had an undergraduate in computer science, partly, but even with that knowledge of being able to program things, I find Gorilla very fast and very easy to use and enjoyed that. So that is just a little bit about my background. I come from cognitive psychology. This is the reason I've joined Gorilla as a company, and I'm now working on lots of different research projects in this company. Now, to start with, we've got a little poll which Danielle is going to launch, and I'm just interested in all of your experience with online research, whether you've done some online research before or whether you haven't, and then whether you've heard about Gorilla before or whether you're completely new to the platform. And then the third question is about which tool today we're going to present three: the game builder, the shop builder, and the multiplayer. And I would like to know which tool you're most interested in at the moment, just to give me an idea of what people would like to know more about. Okay, so I can see the first responses coming in, and it looks like we've got about half of people who have used online research before and half who haven't. And then it looks like we've got loads of new people to Gorilla who've never heard of it before and who are mainly here to hear about Game Builder today. That's really interesting. Now, Gorilla is a platform, obviously, that offers various tools, and Game Builder, Shop Builder, and Multiplayer are just three of these tools which we offer. So we are going to have a look at all three of those, but I'm just going to give it a little bit more time for people to come into the room. And if you want, you can also introduce yourself in the chat and just let us know what kind of research you're doing. It's always interesting to see where people are coming from at the moment, whether you're in psychology, education, linguistics, or anything else. Can see loads of people from everywhere in the world. Nigeria seems to be a big one. South Africa, Polish Academy of Sciences, really interesting. Again, big hello to everyone joining us now. We've just got this little poll where you can tell us a bit about your experience with online research or Gorilla, and then what you're most excited to hear about today. And I've just asked everyone to introduce themselves in the chat. So if you want to, my face is obscured. I hope that's not the case for everyone. Danielle, can you see my face all right?
I can see you. I think you can move the poll box. You can move it, I think, if that's
is
why
that like on my slides?
No, I'm speaking to the audience. If the
That's
poll
why.
box is obscuring your view, you can minimize it or just move it out of the way. I think that should solve it.
Okay. Well, I think we will make a start now. I've had loads of people replying to the poll. That's really good to see. I can say again, most of you are interested to hear more about Game Builder. And then the second best was multiplayer. And then we have a few people also interested in Shop Builder. I will talk about all of these today. So whatever you're interested in, you will hear about it as well. But it just enables me to know what you're most interested in. So let's have a quick look at Gorilla in general. I give you a quick overview of what we do here at Gorilla, and then we'll jump into the more specific research tools we offer. So in terms of the research landscape, what is Gorilla? It's our powerful and easy to use tools for experimental psychology and related disciplines. This is what you can see on the graph here, how we see the research landscape. They're survey tools that are easy but not powerful enough really. And then there's coding in the lab, which is super powerful, but it's very slow and really, really hard to do. Coding online is even harder. We believe that there should be an online research platform where it's easy to create and run traditionally lab-based tasks online, so that cognitive and behavioral scientists can also benefit from the increased speed, scale, and reach of online research and online participant pools, and just make the world a better place through the evidence that can be collected. And that's why we've created Gorilla. It's both easy and powerful to use. And to a large extent, we've succeeded. With Gorilla, we have made scientists' life easier. Here's a case study. This is not the case study. We've got a video here where we're showing the task builder. And you can see that you can have any stimuli and any response. And the stimuli are linked in through the spreadsheet here. This enables you to have variable content for each of those and to just add the images you want to use. Here you can see our questionnaire builder tool where we're doing survey matrices. We can use drop-downs, Likert scales, sliders, all of those without touching a single line of code. You can see that we're just dragging the slider here, and this is our questionnaire interface. You can also have some scoring here, which allows you to also score answers, and then you put everything together into an experiment tree to create the study flow. In this case, we've got the questionnaire at the beginning. We then have 2 tasks here, and we make participants go from the questionnaire to the task. I quite like this quote from Joe Devlin here. Gorilla is a methodological game changer. It allows us to test a far wider range of questions, reaching populations that were previously impossible to reach. Through online data collection, indeed, we link to several external recruitment policies, recruitment services, and you can then make sure that participants come in from the global, the entire world, really. Okay, let's go to a bit more into detail on what kind of studies we see here on Gorilla. So last year, we published this paper, What Do 1 Million Participants Tell Us About Online Research? And what we did here is we looked at all the metadata we had collected through Gorilla. And indeed, those 1 million participants were collected through just 1 year. And what we learned from that, from looking at that metadata of studies being run on Gorilla, is that in sample sizes, most participants are in medium, which means over 100, or in large, over 500 participants in a given study. So that means we've got approximately 25% of participants who we encounter on Gorilla who are part of large powered studies. So really, those samples are not as easy as that to get in the lab, but for online research, it doesn't pose a big problem. In terms of study length, what we find is that the average study length is about 18 minutes, and that's about the data you need. What you can see on the second graph here at the bottom is that attrition doesn't seem to be a problem, even for longer studies. So what we're looking at here is complete participants from just 1 minute to a study that takes up to 65 minutes. And we can see that the completion rate is approximately the same for all of those studies. So even longer studies are completely fine to do with online research. And then the next thing, completion rates. Again, we have looked at different recruitment services that can be used or different ways of recruiting your samples. And we found that the most solid approach to recruiting participants are our ID-based policies, where you send out a link to your study, and those are tracked with IDs your participants, and you then have that data coming in anonymously. And the second best is recruitment platforms, or actually the third best, like Prolific, Amazon Mechanical Turk, which can be easily combined with Gorilla as well. Okay, let's have a look at the benefits of online research. For those of you who have never used online research before, there are probably a few worries you have at the moment about how online research could work in your case. Now, the first benefit we see is that it is so much faster to do online research than actually doing research in the lab. We frequently have users who tell us that they switched to Gorilla and saved months and months of frustration, because it is very easy to build something in the graphical user interface when you don't need the coding knowledge. In terms of scale, we can easily recruit 500 participants in just a lunch break. Actually, we had a few researchers telling us that they just built their study, went away on a break, and in that time they already recruited participants and didn't have to do anything. So it really is possible to recruit a high number of participants, especially if we want to make sure our studies are well powered. Online research really can help with that. And then in terms of the third point here, we've got reach, which means that we are able to reach children, we're able to reach the elderly, any clinical populations, because people can just take part in your studies from the comfort of their homes. They don't have to come into the lab and make sure they've got the time. They can take part whenever they want in your studies. Okay. A few weeks ago, we delivered a webinar about website and social media simulations. If you're interested in that, we've got a blog article on the Sage website where you can watch back the recording if you want to. This time, we're going to speak about games, multiplayers, and shops through our game that Gorilla offers. Now I'm going to start with the presentation most of you were interested in. It actually comes first in my presentation here. We're going to have a look at our game builder. In a nutshell, Game Builder provides you with the same interface as the classic Task Builder, which is our tool for creating behavioral reaction time tasks in Gorilla. Most components that are used in Game Builder, so most settings that you can use, are exactly the same as in Task Builder. And again, there's no coding involved. Additionally, we've got loads of extra features which you can find in Game Builder. First of all, you can set a background in several stages. For example, you can have the foreground, a background, and just layer up images to create exactly the kind of visual interface you want participants to see. You can then also animate objects by combining movement blocks and timings together. This code-free tool allows you to create those animations, and again, you can just choose in the graphical user interface which kind of movement components you want to add up. For example, there's one, you can say move to this position for an image on the screen, and you can then shrink it, make it disappear, so play with the visibility of that object as well. And the third tool, which I find really interesting in Game Builder, is the particle effects. Now, this might all seem very dry at the moment. I'm going to show you in just a moment what this looks like visually and how you can create those games in Gorilla Game Builder. The particle effects would allow you to create realistic looped effects, for example, to create an imitation of fire, smoke, or waves. And we're going to have a look at that. Okay, so here's a quick video about how Game Builder works. You can see we've got those balloons here, and this is actually the effect I was talking about, where you can just create a looped effect. Here you can see a little train and the mouse has to drive the little train. And here we've created a game where participants have to input several different images to be able to unlock the diamonds. Before, this looked like this. In the task builder, you could just have images in general, but there were no animation effects. With Game Builder, you're able to make things appear, disappear, move, or get smaller and bigger again. This is the animated component I was talking about. We've got the move to position here, a delay, and then a move to origin again. This is the way to lay up different movements and make sure that it looks nice in the game. We can test it out a few times to just check everything is working fine. In this game, again, we've got the particle effect. You can see the stars here, which can be modified through different settings. We can make them more or less. We can make them moving faster or moving slower. Here we've got the smoke animation, and here again, we've got a rocket animation that creates those little stars. You can see how this looks like in the Game Builder interface. We don't, as I've said before, we don't have anything coded here. This is all, you're all able to create exactly this game in Gorilla without having to program anything. Okay, now that you've seen a quick preview of what Game Builder looks like, we are going to have a look at a few research questions that could be studied with Game Builder by just looking at what other researchers have done before. In this case study, Mairead McSweeney at the Institute of Cognitive Neuroscience at UCL wanted to create a randomized control trial in schools so that 64 deaf students could test the intervention for speech reading. And what this experiment for her looked like, you can see a little preview on the right-hand side. There was a silent video in the corner, and kids then had to select which word was pronounced by the speaker, and the words would turn up as visual stimuli, and they would have to give those stimuli to the monster to eat and would then receive either some feedback. I think if the response was incorrect, the monster farted, which obviously is very funny for kids. And if it was a correct response, the monster was just happy. And I know it's actually vomiting, so that was probably an incorrect response. But if the monster was happy, it showed that it was happy, and that was the reward for the kids who just read the speech reading correctly. And what Mairead told us about this is that she had this test battery and then an intervention of 12 weeks of training where the children in the schools would just go through the task over and over again. And after that, she had this test battery testing phase post-intervention, which was after 6 weeks, and tested them again on their speech reading. The data Mairead was interested in was the accuracy of kids' responses and their reaction times to the silent videos. And what she found through this study was that the maximized impact of training was really visible, and that the children regularly told her that it was really a fun task to play. They really enjoyed this task. If you want to have a closer look at this study, you can have a look at the article. Holly is going to post that around in the chat, and you can have a look if you're interested in it. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of all the features that Mairead used in Gorilla, just to give you an idea of how that worked out for her. First of all, Mairead used Game Builder tool, and again you can see a little preview of what that looked like on the right-hand side on the screen here. This is actually a task I've been working on myself in collaboration with Mairead, and I really enjoyed making this task. It was very, very fun to create. What you can see we've got here is a moving background. So you can see the stars in the background are actually moving all the time. So that is just a looped animation of an image that moves in the background, and this is very easy just to create in a few seconds. What you can see after that is that we've got the rocket that comes in from the left-hand side, stops in the middle, and we then have the video, which we can have a look at. And then on the right-hand side, you've got the first 4 stimuli, and one stimuli disappears if it's the incorrect one. If it is the correct one, it goes towards the rocket and the rocket disappears. And that is our trial display. All the animations were created in Gorilla, and we can have a look at one animation here in specific. This animation of the rocket moving, you can see it just moves off screen. It is a looped animation again, and it comes back in after the trial, as we've seen from the first video. So there are lots of special effects we can use in Game Builder, and I'm going to show you another one you might not have spotted. Here you can see how the rocket actually turns with the mouse cursor movement. So again, this is just a setting we can use in the Game Builder tool, where you can see the mouse moving and the rocket turning in the same direction. This is done through just a setting we can set up. Okay, this was Mairead's case study. We're going to have a look at a second different paradigm, which was by Joshua Balsters. And Joshua Balsters is Director of Neuroscience at the moment at Nielsen IQ. And what he did in Gorilla is this two-way force task in neuroeconomics. Now, he designed 2 decks of cards and manipulated chancing of winning a reward and how much that reward would be. I'm showing it because it's one of the rare case studies where we have before and after videos, and it has most of the components of a gamified task that we can use in Gorilla. This task is a 2 alternate force choice tasks that are commonplace in neuroeconomics and decision making. We have an n-armed bandit where you choose between slot machines or cards and try to find the one that pays out the most. The gamification techniques in this project involved the narrative. You're in a casino, you're trying to win. We're also showing participants their score. And then we want to make the task as easy to understand as and as pleasing the feedback. What you can see on the right side is that we've got the before version, which was on top, and we've got the after version, which is at the bottom of the screen here. And in the version on top, you can see that we just have this interface where things don't really move around. You can see we've got the bandit there, we've got the jackpot, but then there's no animations, there's no visual effects. Whereas at the bottom, this was created with Gorilla's Game Builder tool, you can see the cards are sliding in, you can see some effects when the cards turn around, you can see the little stars there. So it's all much more visually appealing. In terms of the data, we've also included this graph, which you can see in the middle. The data for the online experiment was a bit more spread out, but you can see that we actually have exactly the same effects that we're observing compared to the lab version, which was the first experiment you can see on the video here. So the findings show us that the data shows really the same findings, but the greater sample size for online research and a little wider spread is obviously totally fine. It just gives us a much better reach to be able to conduct this as an online experiment. The hope is that performance would be closer to what you'd expect to see in a real-world gambling situation. That's just a point on ecological validity Joshua told us about. And if you're interested in the article, we're also going to send around where you can find more information about this task. Now, let's have a look again of how this was done in Gorilla. First of all, the task, which was for lab use, this didn't actually use Gorilla. I think it was done in MATLAB by Joshua Balsters, who was also familiar with coding. He used this experiment, but this could also be done in Gorilla's task builder. Now, for the gamified version of the task, we can see the video again here. We've got the nice star effect. We've got the score, which is in the right top corner there, and which is automatically updating. So each time participants press a card, make a choice here, the score will update. And then what Joshua also did is that he had a within subject design, which means that we had different conditions for all our participants. And that is a really easy thing to do in Gorilla, where you can specify the different conditions and they would just follow on. You can randomize the trials, you can counterbalance the trials to make sure you've got the correct order and don't observe any order effects for those. Okay, and this was it for our game builder tool. I'm obviously going to answer any questions. If you have any, we can have a look at those at the end of the session. But for now, we're going to move on to our next tool, which I would like to present, which is our shop builder tool. In a nutshell, shop builder is a separate tool from our task builder, as task progression would usually look quite different, and there's also no coding involved. But what Shop Builder allows you to do is to create an online shopping simulation as if you were going to a shop where you regularly go to. For example, you could imagine a food shop, and Shop Builder allows you to test all your hypotheses in that online environment and to collect reaction times and all behavioral measures that Gorilla usually allows you to do. Now, in terms of the product, additionally in Shop Builder, we've got loads of different features. Products are listed in a spreadsheet, and images, descriptions, and prices can be uploaded to that spreadsheet so that you can recreate your own online shop within the Gorilla interface. The landing page can be customized, for example, with instructions, and then swaps allow you to test decision-making by offering an alternative product as the one participants chose previously. You can also apply taxes and discounts to certain categories of products if you want to. And then finally, you've got a shopping cart, which will tell you about the money you spent in total and the products you chose. And in the shopping cart, you can also decide to have 2 or 3 of any given item. So you can increase the number of items, and it will then ask you at the end whether you want to proceed and finish with your shopping journey. And then you're done with this experiment. Let's have a look again at a quick video to see how this shop builder works and what it looks like before we move on to the case studies. You can see we've got the example snack shop here, and we've got different items we can add to the basket. We're choosing a wine bottle here, and this is how it will look in the Gorilla shop builder behind the scenes. We have a range of different settings that we're able to modify. On the right-hand side, you can see the basket. Here you can see the spreadsheet and what it looks like, where we've uploaded our stimuli, and how that then looks like in the preview once we preview the online shop. Again, this is not an existing website. This is all created in Gorilla, and it allows you to really control the variables you're studying in your research project. You can see we've got some labels here which we can add. So for example, a heart icon can be used and can be put next to that with the top pick, which appears below certain items here. You can see we've got the heart icon here appearing in the basket now. And then in terms of the data, it's really easy to download this shop builder data as well. It's really easy to handle that. We can see all the decisions participants made and the reaction times of when that decision was made, when an object was added to the basket. You can also modify the minimum and maximum purchase limits, tasks, and discounts. So this should give you a quick overview of what Shop Builder does, but we're also going to have a look again, as for Game Builder, we're going to have a look at the kind of research projects that could be run with the Shop Builder tool. First of all, we've got Dr. Pasquale Remo, who works at NYU, and he used this randomized controlled trial with questionnaires about health and nutrition of participants. His aim was to encourage healthier eating and drinking by addressing causes like food affordability and using nudges for sustainability. In terms of the design, we have a shopping simulation here, which was done with Gorilla Shop Builder, with preloaded carts and a discount for healthy food choices. For example, you can see in the image, we've got 2 apples here, which are promoted as the healthy options. And then we're collecting the data in terms of reaction times and decision-making or changes in choices of participants. The findings of this research were that online supermarkets can play really a proactive role in shaping healthier food choices. So Pasquale Rumo was able to observe that participants actually, when prompted, would go were listed in the shop instead of another option. If you're interested in the full article about shop builder research here, you can also, we're going to send around the link. You can have a look at that paper that was published. In terms of using Gorilla's shop here, we had a quick look at the shop already, but I'm going to just show you this one here again. We're just adding a wine bottle here to the basket. You can see we can increase that. We can add another object, and we can then check out to our basket and say we are finished with our shopping tool. Now, after this preview, we just had a look at how the shopping experience would look like. After the preview, you can always download the preview data, and that gives you already an idea, having tested it yourself, what the shop might look like and what kind of responses you might expect from participants, how the data comes through exactly. In terms of the study design, Pasquale used this randomized control trial design where he had a pre-test and a post-test, and then he randomized participants into different groups. So on the image here, you can see that we have a control group, which is there marked in black where it says 10. And then we've got a treatment group, and those are going to 2 different tasks here. So we are making sure that participants have a different task, and they would then join again for the post-test at the end. This is a very easy design, which you can set up in Gorilla's experiment builder, and the shops and games and multiplayer experiments, these could all be part of this experiment tree. This is just where you lay out the flow of your entire study. Okay, and then we've got another case study here from Dimitris Koutoukidis, who works at the University of Oxford in the primary care health sciences. And what he wanted to do is he wanted to test messaging effects of food swaps in an online canteen. For example, in the image here, you can see, first of all, in the top left corner, you can see that there's no messaging. In the top right corner, you can see there's one messaging, this black circle there. I don't think you can read it on your screen, but it says this has fewer calories. So we're offering a different item instead of the first choice of the participant, and we have this message there. Then at the bottom left, we are also displaying how many calories that would save participants. And then in the bottom right corner, we're displaying how many calories and which this amount of calories would equate to. So we're telling participants exactly what kind of calorie intake that means and what kind of calories they would have saved by going for the healthier option. So Dimitris used this between participants design with an online shop of snacks and drinks, and he recruited in total 3,481 participants, so quite a huge sample. Those were all randomized to the 4 conditions we just had a look at, and he then collected the reaction times and decisions on foods and drink items and the agreed swaps. So when participants accepted to take another item instead of the one they had chosen before. Dimitris found that the messaging for swaps is most effective with the exact number of calories saved and the physical activity calorie equivalent. So the 4th option, which we've got in the bottom left corner. Again, if you're interested in this article, Holly is going to send around a link. You can have a look at how this research was done exactly and see all the findings in a bit more detail. We're going to have a look again at how this works in Gorilla. First of all, we've got this experimental online canteen. You've seen this shop before. We just have a range of different products listed here. They're all quite similar in price, but participants can freely choose which item they would like to purchase. And then we offer the swaps for items. This is something you can set up in the shop builder setting For example, here at the beginning, we're telling the participants you chose this, and then we're offering a different product that participants can choose instead. And we're then observing their reactions. Do they want to keep the product, or do they want to choose a different product and go with that product instead? In terms of experimental design, Dimitris was quite similar to what we saw before for Pasquale, just that he randomized participants into 3 different groups. We had 3 different shots here that we were using, or the 4 different conditions actually. And for those 4 different conditions, we had one control here, a calorie messaging, and then the calorie messaging and the physical activity were in the 3rd shop. And this was used to create a between participants design so that he could study, okay, is there a difference between the different messaging I have used? This is it for our shop builder tool. Now let's go to our last tool, which we're going to present today, which is the multiplayer tool. In a nutshell, multiplayer builds on the task builder interface in Gorilla with a couple more components to use on top of that. In a multiplayer experiment, you can have up to 8 players that can collaborate or interact in a given behavioral experiment together. Again, there's absolutely no coding involved. The additional functionality compared to Task Builder 2 is that, first of all, we can define the visibility. So you can define who sees what and which player is able to advance the screen, or if it has to be all of the players that are currently in one experiment before being able to move on to the next screen. Second, we've got the option to add a video or a text chat to allow participants to collaborate or discuss together. And then we also have a network field, and this allows us to save responses from participants across all players and use them later in your study to display them back, or you could just save them in your data file so that you save a variable across all participants. You can also manage how participants are assigned into different groups in those experiments through matchmaking criteria. This is all managed in the experiment builder, in the where you lay out the study flow. In terms of multiplayer and what it looks like, we always have to be careful when previewing it because we need to open several different windows to suggest where several different participants actually collaborating on this one experiment. But just to give you a quick idea, you can see multiplayer with the Task Builder 2 component here. And you can see on the left-hand side, you've got player 1 and player 2 then slightly late on top of that. We've got a text chat here, and you can see player 2 just typed something and it appeared on player's 1 text chat as well. And here they are now going through this task together, and we are creating separate rooms for them so that players can find themselves. In this game, which is called the dictator game, one player is assigning gold bars and the other player either has to accept or reject the amount of gold that was distributed to them. You can also have a video chat. These are 2 of my colleagues who are currently taking part in this drawing task, and that is done through the multiplayer where my colleagues can see themselves and can talk to each other. It all runs in Task Builder 2, as I've said before, and it's very easy to just label the multiplayer function and to then try it out yourself. Here you can see we're now selecting the player, so who is going to play, and we can specify that for all of the different components we've got on our task. We can see whether that should be seen by all players or just specific players, and we can specify exactly who can see what. Okay, and because at the moment we don't have any multiplayer case studies, we're very much looking forward to getting some new ones. But just to give you a few ideas, the dictator game, which is one I mentioned before, is something that is definitely feasible. One person distributes the gold, the other can accept or reject. As with all the Gorilla tooling, what you can do with that dictator game is you can collect the reaction times of participants, and you can also observe their decision making. So whether one player accepted the amount that was distributed to them or whether they rejected it. We could also imagine a prisoner's dilemma where participants either have to confess to a crime or remain silent, and their punishment varies with what the other person said. So this is quite a standard paradigm in psychology. I'm sure most of you have heard about this before. We don't currently have this task made in Gorilla, but it's something that is easy to implement with our multiplayer tools. And then the third task, which I've actually previously seen, is this tangram task where participants have to describe different objects they can see on the screen, and they have to identify them based on the other player's description. So that allows them to collaborate, to speak to each other. That could be through a text chat or could be through video chat, and they then have to put the objects together in the exact same way. So because we don't currently have a multiplayer case study, we have launched a new grant scheme, which I'm going to tell you a bit more at the end of the session today, specifically for our multiplayer research. And we're very much looking forward to getting more and creative new ideas about what can be done with multiplayer. So if this is something you're interested in, I would suggest just give me a few more minutes and we'll come to this at the end of the session, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how you can apply for this grant and what's involved in the grant itself. Let's move on. Just a quick note here about the conference we are organizing, which is called the Be Online Conference, which happens once a year. If you're interested in this conference, and because we can't cover everything in those 40 minutes we've got today, you can have a look at this website, and this is where you will find a lot more case studies we have currently available from our users. So we have recorded talks here at the website, and you can have a look at those and just see what kind of research you're interested in. I'm pretty sure that there's everything that you can do in psychology. There will be an example for it, and you can find those 100 short talks here from researchers of a wide range of disciplines. I've just mentioned this. I'm going to move on to the next part here to tell you a little bit more about what is our vision here at Gorilla and give you a few ideas about our mission. So the vision is to create a better world based on evidence and not opinion. And we do this, we say people go into Gorilla and gorgeous cognitive and behavioral data comes out, and it's our tools that allow you to create those different studies. So what's inside Gorilla? Gorilla is this all-in-one powerful and easy-to-use platform that allows researchers to create surveys. It has feature parity with something like Qualtrics, for example, if you're familiar with that. It's got the task building tool, which I mentioned a lot today, but I'm aware we haven't actually looked at the task builder. You can do that by just having a look on the website as well if you're interested in it. Task Builder is similar to ePrime, and then what you do is you link those together to create the experiment flow so that you can go from the surveys to the tasks into a randomizer, which randomizes you to different conditions onto further tasks. And as we've talked about Game Builder, Multiplayer, and Shop Builder today, you can see all of those can be appearing in your experiment flow and be part of your study here. I'm not going to have a look here at the advanced features because we're already quite advanced in time. Just to give you 3 ideas why people choose Gorilla at the moment. It's this combination of powerful, you can do what you need without the technical headache. It's easy also to use, that you save time and that you can focus on the science that you love and not the programming. And then it is supported so that you're never lost and never alone. We've got a dedicated support team that's able to help you get your studies up and running. And this makes it a better product really that you can really succeed with. In terms of everything in one platform, we offer, as I've mentioned before, the surveys, we offer the tasks. This is the task builder I've told you about. And then, as we've had a look at that today, we've got the games, we've got the shops, and we've got the multiplayer function. And then I've also said that you don't need to know how to code anything, but if you're very familiar with coding, if you've done that before, and if you're a big fan of programming, you also have the option to add a script to your tasks to create any customized functionality. So if that's what you're after, we can also cater for that. I'm just going to advance a bit more because I know we are almost there in terms of the time, and I wanted to really speak to you about the grants we are launching. So first of all, I've got a few next steps for everyone on the call. If you're interested in Gorilla, if this sounded like something that could be helpful for your research, I would really suggest you sign up for an account. It's completely free to create an account in Gorilla, and you can also have access to all the tools I've shown you today. You can play around with them and just see whether this fits the type of research you would like to be doing. And if it does, then you can also watch our onboarding webinar, which gives you a good first starting point to see. And if you have any questions about it, do get in touch with us and we can chat. You can chat to a research specialist like myself or anyone else from our support team who would be happy to answer any questions. Okay, we are now getting to the grants, which I already mentioned. On the left-hand side here, I've got this image about our current grant scheme, which is just opened at the beginning of this week and which will be open for a couple more weeks to accept any proposals. So if multiplayer research is your thing, then feel free to submit an application for that grant. You can find all the details on our website. Holly is also going to send around a link to the grant page where you can sign up for the grant. And if multiplayer is not your thing, then we run grant schemes a few times per year. You can also just leave us your email address there and you will be then informed about any future grant schemes. You can sign up as and when you wish. And the second announcement I wanted to make today is that we've got another webinar next week, which is part of our Gorilla Presents series. And this is about eye tracking with the webcam. So if you're interested in that, feel free to check out our Gorilla Presents website where you can sign up for that webinar. It's completely free to attend. And we've got a guest speaker, Janina Prestauka, who's a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Bergen. And she will talk to us about how she's used webcam eye tracking in her own research in linguistics. Now, just a few more comments on the grant review process. We are looking for 3 things particularly. The first one is motivation. So we want to see that your research question addresses a gap in the literature. The second one is feasibility. We want to see that your proposal makes a good and creative case for the use of Gorilla's tools, and in this case, specifically the multiplayer tools. And then the third one is the impact. We want to see that your research findings make a demonstrable contribution to the behavioral sciences. Now, this was everything from me. Thank you very much for coming to the webinar today. I'm sure we've got a few questions which we can take in just a minute. I'll just put up the last slide here. If you do want to get in touch with us, here are our details. I've got my CEO and founder here on as well, Jo Evershed. You can contact her over that email address there on the right-hand side, or you can get in touch with myself if you want to speak about anything in particular.
Great. Thank you so much for that presentation, Johanna. That was very informative, very dense. So a lot to get through. Thank you. Very interesting as always. So we have a couple of questions. I think they're more general rather than specific, but maybe you can talk about how you can recruit some participants. Maybe you can clarify around that.
Definitely, no problem at all. So in Gorilla, we've got various recruitment services you can use. I think I've mentioned a few of them. Prolific is a big one in that domain. We've got Amazon Mechanical Turk. We've got Sonar Systems as a university participant recruitment pool. And Gorilla has native integrations to all of those services. So it's really easy to set up. If you don't want to use an external recruitment service, what you can also do is just create a link to your study, which you can then put on social media or send around by email. So that would allow you to have anyone who has access to the link access your study, and then participants are able to take your study and just finish it whenever it's over. And that is the easiest way of recruiting participants. And we usually see a lot of students actually using this approach because it allows them to recruit participants without any additional fees involved. They can just put that on their social media and get participants through that way.
Great, thank you. The next question, can the applications be used for both qualitative and quantitative research?
Yes, definitely. I think I remember that question. I think we had that in a previous webinar as well. Definitely possible to have qualitative and quantitative research on Gorilla. As I've mentioned before, we've got this survey tool which allows you to create a qualitative survey. We've got a recording feature which allows participants to speak to their webcam and be registered through the webcam. If they want to, yes, Qualtrics survey is exactly what you could compare this to. I've just seen that message in the chat. We actually have feature parity with Qualtrics, so everything you are able to do in Qualtrics survey is possible to do in Gorilla's survey builder as well. And we actually have a tool that allows you even to import your Qualtrics surveys into Gorilla if you just want to convert them into a Gorilla survey because you've got other things going on in Gorilla, for example. But yeah, there are loads of qualitative methods you can use and loads of quantitative, obviously, as I've said. We record the reaction times, accuracy, we record participants' choices. So really everything a participant does, whether that's clicking a button or interacting with their mouse, that will all be part of your data file. So there is a lot of data.
Great. We have a couple of questions that were sent ahead about sort of what domains you can use this kind of research in. So, for example, the questions were specifically about military research, teaching international economics, or analyzing security concerns. So that's quite broad, but I don't know if you've seen anything that went into that domain.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I actually had a user from a military service just a couple of weeks ago. And what he studied was attention in military pilots. And he used online experiments to run his own research about selective attention and attention processes. So that's definitely something we've seen before. You've also mentioned economics. Yeah, the shop builder tool is a really good tool in that area because we're looking at purchasing behavior, consumer behavior. And we have the game builder tool, which allows you to look into a more gamified version of that. So really, really all tools speak to that. The ones I've mentioned today, in terms of the multiplayer, for example, we've got the collaboration. We're looking at social behavior here. So there's a range of different disciplines that can make use of Gorilla. And as you've mentioned, security as well. I've mentioned this at the beginning of the webinar. I think we had this workshop on UX, UI simulations or social media simulations, where in Gorilla, Gorilla can be used to recreate your website. As you've seen with the shopping environment, we've actually recreated an online shop. And that can be done for any type of website in Gorilla, which allows you then to study reaction times or click behavior from participants in that way.
Great. Yeah, it's very interesting, the range of things that you can do with Gorilla. I don't think there's necessarily a limit on a sector or its application. It's just whether you can imagine doing it in
Exactly.
that space.
I think our biggest barriers are imagining what is possible or coming up with a research question. And then the exciting thing is to just think of something and try out how it works and which tool would be best to do it with.
Exactly. We had a question from Stephanie in the chat regarding how do you determine statistical significance? Now, this obviously is a more sort of general question, but yeah, maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, sure. So statistical significance, I think I've talked about this study about the shop builder where we looked at three different shops, and we've got this control group and we've got a treatment group and another treatment group. What we do for those studies usually is that we calculate an average reaction time, and we would then compare the average reaction time of those three participant groups. And we usually use something like an ANOVA or a t-test to be able to compare those means between the different groups. Now, that is obviously very much dependent on the kind of research you're doing. So statistical significance, as I've learned it during my PhD, was that you have to have your alpha, which is smaller than a set amount, and that varies across fields as well. We've got a different one in psychology than we have in medicine, for example. So it's a very broad topic. But on our Gorilla website, as we know that students are also very new to data analysis and want to know a lot more and how to handle the data, we do have a few guides which you can have a look at. So as I've said, you're never ever alone if you have some data on Gorilla and you want to know what to do with it. You can always ask us questions, but it's very much dependent on your research paradigm.
Okay, so we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A about specific sort of webinars and what resources you have. So Chizoba, excuse me if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, asks whether how to learn Gorilla gamified experience. Now, I think that you have a very robust support page, so I don't know if you can speak to specific resources, but maybe that just to give an overview.
Definitely. Actually, if people are interested in the gamification, we do have a Game Builder webinar, which is recorded and available on our website on demand. So if you, I think, Holly, if you can find the link to that Game Builder webinar, it should be under the support tab. We can send it around and you can have a look at that webinar. I think it's an hour long, and it walks you through the process of setting up a game in Gorilla's Game Builder. So it's very, very hands-on and very explains everything from the beginning. Today we just had time at looking at what it looks like in the end, but we didn't actually cover the process of building a game. But that webinar gives you a really good starting point. And other than that, as Danielle has said already, we've got a very helpful website where you can find literally anything about all the Gorilla tools. And yeah, you can see it on there.
Excellent. I think we've got time for one more question, maybe. Let's talk a little bit about the fee structure, because I think people are interested. Now, obviously, you've said it's free to access, but how do people go about it from there?
Yeah, so we've got a tiered pricing system. As I've said, Gorilla is free to use. You can build your experiment, you can play around with it and figure out whether that's everything you need. And if it is, then you can go ahead and collect data, and this is where the pricing comes in. So we at Gorilla basically pay for the data storage. We're not paying for the participants, as participants usually come from elsewhere. Sometimes they're paid through the recruitment panel, sometimes they're not paid at all, they're just taking part voluntarily. What that means then is that you can purchase Gorilla what we call tokens, and a token would be the equivalent of one data set. So you're not paying by study length, it could be really any length, you're paying per complete data set of one participant. And that means we're starting off with a pay-as-you-go tier where you can pay exactly for the amount of participants you need. Or you can get onto a subscription where you can have either just one member or up to 10 members in a lab subscription, or up to a lot more members for a department subscription. And if you're in the UK, we have currently subscriptions with 50% of UK universities. So chances are very high that you already have Gorilla at your university. If you don't, then you can have a look at our pricing page, which is available online as well. Or maybe Holly, yeah, perfect. There's the pricing page. Holly has just sent it before me even asking for it. Amazing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, Johanna and Holly from Gorilla. Thanks to everyone for participating. I think it was a very good webinar, great questions. So thanks, everyone. Hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Look out for our emails. Goodbye. Bye,
That
everyone.
sounds great. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.